Thank you very much. Thank you. I share your passion. I think going back, just stepping back a little bit, what has been identified has been some challenges. Completely share your views on the relationship with employment. Professional development, couldn't agree with you more. But let's just go back, just a little step. Why is research so important? Asantha has taken her research, turned it into published form, which means it's in the public domain and we should all read it. But why is research important? Through this publication, Asantha has made a significant contribution to the body of knowledge, internationally, nationally. What do we know about the state of ELT in undergraduate systems in Sri Lanka? Making a contribution to the body of knowledge is a significant undertaking. It's also provided us with evidence. Now, why is evidence so important? We use that to start to build the theory of change. What is the issues? What are the issues? You mentioned many of them in your earlier presentation. And starting from those issues, we build the theory of change that helps us design and implement systems reform based on evidence. Finally, it presents a call to action. That was a very passionate call for action, and I completely share your views on some of the challenges and ways we can address them. The British Council, we've been here a long time, we'll be here for a long time. You know, the British Council in Sri Lanka will outlive me. But what are we doing now in the British Council to support that call to action? Working with the government, working with the public sector, the private sector, and so on. Although I haven't been in Sri Lanka for long, I've been around the block a few times. I was in Bangladesh, worked a bit all over the shop, really. And when you look at government policy statements, they all share two things in common, and this is across South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, the Americas, Europe. And it goes back to what is the purpose of education at primary, secondary, further and tertiary. Partly it is socialisation, we're all familiar with that. Through education, our young people acquire a sense of self. I suppose you can say it's how they acquire their moral compass. They become, hopefully, good citizens. It gives them a sense of national identity. As I say, it's that moral identity, moral compass in terms of their contribution to society. But the second component is always there, and that is the role in education in providing a competent, qualified workforce for the future prosperity of the country. So that is why we're starting with transform. We all live in a very sort of globally competitive environment. Neighbour countries can be competitors, they can be collaborators. It is a global economy, it's a global world, and it is competitive. So, I will say a few words about what we're doing, what Transform, our programme, is, how it does respond to this call to action, and what we can do to support yourselves, to support our collaborators, the government, the public sector, the private sector, in making sure there is a fit-for-purpose and relevant education system which young people can access. I'm not very good with technology, so if it breaks, I'll unplug it and plug it in again. Oh, it works. So why are we doing this programme, Transform? What is it? It's a programme we are designing and implementing in collaboration with the government of Sri Lanka. And that includes the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, UGC, Ministry of Skills Development, and multiple other bodies. It is to support that implementation of policy. Why? The key words there are, for me, fit for purpose and relevant. Young people go through education, we all have. Some of us stop earlier, some of us stop later. But the question for me is, and so what? What happens when we leave education? When we leave education, whether we leave school or university, whether it's after first degree, postgraduate doctoral work, we all have our own personal aspirations. We all know we all have hopes for our lives. We have potential. So we are very focused on the personal, but at the same time, all of us can contribute to the economic growth and social development of our country. So on the personal side, English for interpersonal communications, we know about the global comms, access to information through the internet, and let's be honest, speaking a foreign language can sometimes be and carry with it social status. Employment, it is a global economy. Young people today have portfolio careers. They don't start one job and do it for the next 30 years. It's much more portfolio careers, which makes transferable skills even more important. What are those transferable skills? Transferable skills, core skills, 21st century skills, employability skills, whatever you want to call them. But it is about the cognitive, interpersonal and communication, the problem solving, the creativity and innovation, working with others, understanding the other's point of view. And these skills start becoming relevant from primary, even from kindergarten, how to play, all the way through education up into higher education and beyond into the workplace. Do young people have the skills for this globalized world? I mean, your research clearly indicated that in some cases they don't. And we carried out an English impact survey last year where we tested and assessed the perceptions of over 1,500 young people aged on average 15 and a half. And the overarching result was that most of them are performing at level A1 on the Common European Framework. Not great. And that actually correlates with the government's own statistics after looking at the results of the national examinations. So, are the skills there? Possibly not. What can we do to support young people in acquiring the skills that helps them enter the workplace and achieve those personal aspirations? What are the learning outcomes of education? Is it knowledge? Is it performance? Is it skill? Is it attitude? What are the learning outcomes? So this programme Transform, who's it for? Professionals, ourselves. We are professionals in the education sector. We are, at different times, teachers, teacher educators, administrators, leaders, policy makers, advocates, influencers, implementers. We all have multiple functions and we work in different institutions. Ultimately, young people. Through our work in the education sector, what kind of life for them can we support the development of? Whether we're, and I do agree with you on the need for professional curriculum development, whether we're curriculum developers, assessors, teacher trainers, it's all going up to what are those learning outcomes for young people and what will they do post-education. Do we include 21st century skills in there? Yeah, are we going to embed them within our curricula? I heard a very strong argument that we should, and I would totally share your views on that one. More for me, it's what are the learning outcomes, which goes back to your point on employability, and it's the and so what after education. And how are these skills taught and assessed? Employers, do they have realistic expectations of young people? Are employers clear in articulating the skills they need? Is there clarity on what career pathways are on offer for young people? What kind of jobs can they expect to get? Is there clarity on the labour market? Does the education offer reflect the labour market? Does it work towards occupational standards which are required by the labour market? Lots of questions, don't know the answers yet. So, what will we actually do? I think a key element that comes through your research, very clear, this is the call to action, and it is reflected in your earlier comments. It's about professionalising the education sector. We have started and will continue to work over the coming year a number of projects addressing the development of teacher educators, working with colleges of education, in some cases specifically with future teachers of English. We'll be working with secondary school leaders around the country, around the island, to ensure that there is an enabling environment, picking up on the comments you both made about while teachers may acquire skills through teacher training, they may not apply them in the workplace due to a wide range of factors. But school leaders can provide that enabling environment. That's secondary. Moving into higher education, again, it picks up the points you made and you clearly articulated in your research, the need to have learner-centred approaches in the HE classroom. If we're introducing them in primary and secondary, it needs to follow through into higher education. So there is total flow through the system of learner-centred approaches. We can go back to the teacher-centred ones if we have to, depending on the learning outcomes. But we're arguing, as you have done in your research, for the case for sort of progression, natural progression in the approaches which are used in the classroom. We're also looking at the idea that young people should have access to fit-for-purpose, relevant education, quality education, irrespective of when they're in the public or private sector, irrespective of where they are geographically around the island. Challenging, but just because it's challenging doesn't mean we don't acknowledge it and try to address it. And there is, as you mentioned, the role of sort of social integration in the education process, and we will be working on the role of language in peace building and reconciliation. That's on the professional thing. That's building the capacity of individuals and institutions. In terms of the system, we will be engaging with our partners in government in quality assurance through the professional standards of teachers, using continuing professional development, the idea of teachers of modern foreign languages having a specific language competence at whatever level is agreed on the CEFR. In India, I think it's B2. English language teachers in the secondary system, the policy, whether it's implemented is another issue, is that they have a language proficiency level of B2 on the CEFR. We'll also be looking specifically in higher education at the interface between employers and education. It's quite common in the UK now because of increasing college fees to study for students to live close to home. So universities are moving much more into serving their local communities. So the boundaries between FE and HE are blurring. Further education now offers degree level, postgraduate degree level. That's the classic vocational side. Whereas universities are now adopting a more hands-on occupational standard assessment approach in HE. So it's all about how do we not only build good citizens of the future, the socialisation part of the policy, but also how do we ensure that industry has access to the workforce from low-skilled levels through to captains of industry tomorrow. Another project we'll be doing working in higher education is working on the fostering the development of the digital creative sector. Thinking about it, employment ready, high value, high impact. You know, it's the skills agenda, but not all low-level plumbers, electricians. You know, the digital creatives are a highly, highly, highly skilled sector, supports international mobility, but of course with that often comes proficiency in language. We'll also be helping young people develop their employability skills through our online offer, but also making informed career choices by looking at how we can improve the implementation of careers guidance for young people entering the labour force after secondary, but also after higher education. It's about having the research, which is why your book, the published form of your research, is so timely and so critical. I mean, quite frankly, you took 10 years, 8 years. I mean, I trained in a long time ago as a teacher of modern foreign languages, actually, from 11 to 18. The materials have changed. The topics of the reading texts have changed. The fundamental pedagogy hasn't. So research has a long shelf life, can have a long shelf life, as long as the fundamental underlying issues remain relatively unaddressed. So everything we do is based on research. Some of it is our own commissioned research, such as our English Impact Survey, and we will be doing a survey to review language proficiency levels of English teachers in proficiency. Sometimes we use external research like Asantha's, research produced by the World Bank and many, many other bodies, but the research is necessary to inform our programme design. We will look at communications from the perspective of advocacy with policymakers, but as I think both ladies, you both mentioned the importance of shaping perceptions of the wider public. So there's something in there about the social marketing aspect of knowledge, attitude and behaviour change in shaping perceptions of parents, influences, people who young people look to as a source of information. We also need to shape perceptions of employers on what young people can actually bring to the marketplace. And we need to shape perceptions on the realities of a labour market. Not everybody's going to be a doctor, engineer and lawyer. Quite frankly, I quite liked the idea of being a brain surgeon when I was young. I was never into the astronaut thing, but brain surgery sounded quite fascinating. Did it happen? No. So it's about being realistic about pathways. So who will we work with? The partnership is critical. Obviously, we need to ensure that whatever we do fits with government plans, the coming planning cycle. But we will be looking at implementation of policies. And of course, we do need to acknowledge the importance of social integration as we are in a post-conflict situation. I think the bottom line is it's a very competitive environment. I mean, I came here from Bangladesh, and before that Pakistan, and Central Asia, worked in China. And these are issues many, many, many countries are going through, including the UK. Is our system fit for purpose? We will be bringing in UK partners, obviously, British Council. We will be looking to share the experience and expertise and the pain of approaches in the UK. And we will be looking to work with employers, both international and domestic. Basically, foreign direct investment coming into Sri Lanka. First question the HR director asks is, have we got access to a competent, qualified workforce? And we will work with the wider international community. But above all, we work in the field of education. So all of you in the room, I like to think of, as I said earlier, friends, collaborators, partners. And we will be working quite specifically in a different way with the higher education system as we move forward. Now, how long will it last? We're doing the planning for the first 2 years. Obviously, the challenges you've been talking about, it's no quick fix. It's a long, sustained I can't think of any other word to say except intervention. It's about arguing the case for change, having evidence, and your work is seminal in providing evidence in HE. It's about doing it together and reconciling multiple agendas. There will be compromise along the way. But I think the most important thing, I feel a bit like Star Wars here, you know, peace be with you. I think the most important thing is that the journey is beginning, and it would be a pleasure and privilege to go on the journey with you. Thank you.